Okay, so my title of my talk here is an interesting one. It's called Entrepreneurship, the Answer to the Crisis in Higher Education and the Robotic Threat. What in the world does that even mean, right? So we're going to have some fun. But first, a little bit about me. You just heard an overview there, so I'm just going to give a couple little instances. This, I know, is about tech entrepreneurship in this section of this class. And entrepreneurship is awesome, but tech entrepreneurship is the best. I have a lot of reasons for that. I like that the universe gives us electrons, and through a keyboard we can turn it into a product that doesn't take up any physical space and makes a lot of money, and society over rewards us for doing it. Isn't that a great business to be in, Steve? It is. You don't have to handle inventory. You don't have to take all the headaches with worrying about physical goods and moving them, all these things. So tech entrepreneurship is interesting, especially software. All right, so with that, this is my background in entrepreneurship coming out of BYU when I graduated. I left here in 1985, and I got involved in the print yellow pages business. The print yellow pages industry was in a very dynamic moment then. In 1984, the federal government broke up AT&T, American Telephone and Telegraph, into 8 different businesses. One of them are not 8 different companies. One of the 5 major lines of business of AT&T was Yellow Pages, and it was by far the most profitable on a percentage basis. It was a very lucrative industry. And so I got into that business, became a print publisher, competing against the phone company. And it was a great business. We had very large profits, and it was fantastic. Then we worried all the time about technologies that could replace this paper and ink product. And it wasn't until 1995 when there was a serious threat, and that threat came in the form of the internet. The Yellow Pages is actually a database, a 2-dimensional database when it's printed, and the thought of putting this database up on a computer network where people could search for information the same way I did inside my company as a Yellow Page company. I had some computers and I could search databases, but what if the whole world had access to Yellow Pages data free out on the internet? And that really was a fanciful thought to me. And so when it came around in 1995, I decided to sell my print company, and I launched an internet company to put Yellow Pages up online. It was the first ever Yellow Pages derived from print products that went up online. And my model was to form a consortium of all the print publishers that could sell on the internet to their customers in the local market advertising. And this model proved to be strong. 10 companies wanted to do business with me that were some of the major companies in the nation. One of them was Microsoft. I talked to Microsoft for about 8 months, and then, lo and behold, 3 guys left Microsoft and told me to do business with them and not Microsoft. And I actually got enticed by them, and I did that and joined up with them. And they had just formed a new company 1 month earlier called InfoSpace, and so they acquired my company. We rolled them in together, and we went and had fun. In about 2 years, we signed 4,000 partnership deals. And in 1998, the company went public on the NASDAQ. That's a dream of most entrepreneurs, is to have this type of thing happen, and it happened to me. I was a student just like you at BYU, had no idea something like that would happen in my life. All I did was took the knowledge I got at BYU, went out and worked hard, and things happened. It was really fun and interesting. In 1995, at the dawn of the internet era, so much was going on, and it was just an interesting time to be a part of this. Now, InfoSpace was an interesting experience. I'm just going to share this because it'll come into focus later in my presentation. This is what happens to an entrepreneur. You know, you dream about building a company. You dream, if everything goes well, we're going to change the world with our product. It's going to change the industry forever. People are going to love it. And we'll get rewarded financially for all the hard work, the hours and hours we put into it, the years we put into it. And so this is what happened. Usually, most of the time, your company, if it's successful, will maybe get bought out by a bigger company. Ours just so happened to have the fortune to be able to say, hey, public, we're going to put it on the market, and you can buy shares on the stock market. That doesn't happen to every company, but it did to us. So on December 15th, 1998, I remember sitting in our conference room watching on a screen, and the trading day started, and up comes InfoSpace, and the first trade started going off, and we came out at $15, and on the first day, it ended at $20. Now, we were disappointed. Isn't it interesting? Why would we be disappointed? We had a 33% gain in one day. It's because it was the internet, and it was 1998, and there were some companies that came out at 15 and closed at 60 and went up 400%, and we only went up 33%. Now, but you think about what's going on there, is that means everybody that held stock in the company, in one day, their value in the company went up 33%. It's pretty startling. Matter of fact, we had about 400 people on the day we went public, only 400, that's amazing, and every single person, including the receptionist, became a multimillionaire. It's a crazy, crazy time. Now, I'm here to tell you, whenever I tell the story and show the numbers I'm about to tell you, that this was a phenomenal experience, and it had all the greatness that you might think about, but also was really sad too, because it was too much too soon for most of the people. I was the second oldest person in the company at age 34. All the 20-somethings got all this money so fast, and it destroyed many of their lives. So I like to tell you a warning that when BYU has the number 3 or number 4, what is it right now? Number 4 ranked entrepreneurship program in the country. I spent 12 years teaching here. There's not a single class I don't think that I taught when I taught classes, and we actually had them start companies in the class. They often won many of the competitions. But I don't think there's a single class of that nature that I didn't teach, and 5 years later, 2 or some number out of 50, 1 or 2 out of 50, 5 years later was a multimillionaire from starting a company because of what they got in that class. And, you know, like Adam Edmonds just sold. Did you see that? Yeah, I just got my check. Nice. For the payoff. And so, interesting how that all happens, right? So, the funny thing is, it's just really interesting. The too much too soon was the funniest thing. I saw more unhappiness, more divorce, and more disappointment. And I said, this incredible thing's happening. Why are you guys all having these problems? But it's interesting. There's a certain maturity you need, and you have to handle this well when it happens to you. So one of the things is I like to do a disclaimer on all this. If you get involved in this, it's fantastic. Just make sure you keep it together and you know what's right, and read Jacob 2:18, 19, and 20, and understand that it's okay to want to create wealth and be a leader in business and do great things. But make sure that you seek first the kingdom of God. Keep it in priority. All right, with that said, so we had an incredible thing happen to us. In 18 months, because we were at the dawn of the mobile movement, we own 92% of all the mobile data. Not only did they take our yellow pages and white pages, but we had all this data in all sorts of things that were being fed up through mobile phones back in 1998. And we went through 3 stock splits in 18 months. You know what a stock split is? Double the number of shares in the company and have the price. That's a neutral mathematical event, but it makes the stock price cheaper, and so more people will buy it because they think it's a better deal. And so it tends to drive the value up. And that happened to us 3 times. Basically, on March 3rd of 2000, we closed $138.50. But adjusted for the splits and all the other stock events, that was $1,108 from that original 15. Okay. Now, as an entrepreneur, that was at the beginning of the company. What do you think I paid per share? How much? $3. No, why would I pay that much? When you start a company, you only usually throw in a few $100s, maybe a few $1,000s each, and then you each all get your founder shares in the company. So my shares, I had shares that I probably paid 5/100ths of a penny per share, and later I bought about $150,000 worth at $1 a piece because I had some money. Okay, so When you do that, you can see that you can create some fabulous wealth through entrepreneurship. There's nowhere in America, nowhere in the world, excuse me with my cough, I get so excited, and the fact I'm a little sick, that you can create this kind of wealth in such a short order of time. All right. This was an amazing experience. Now, when you make a little money in entrepreneurship, you usually go the next step in life, which is you start saying, hey, I don't want to work that hard again because that was really hard. I'm going to invest in other people that want to work that hard and are hungry, and you become what's called an angel investor. And you take your wealth and you start finding these other people and you invest in them. And so I've done 65 or so direct investments and hundreds of indirect investments. This means that I've given money to these entrepreneurs. Many of them have failed. I've lost all my money, and some have done really well. For instance, Omniture, which many of you have heard of, that did really well. This one is probably the worst one ever, a movie. This is something you can learn from me and never have to repeat a mistake, which is worth your tuition, right? Don't ever invest in an independent movie. They almost all lose all the money. There's only a few Napoleon Dynamites, and that's like predicting where lightning's going to strike. Most movies lose all their money, and the artists just jump from movie to movie to movie. It's very hard to make money in the movie business. So I did that one time and learned that lesson and don't do that anymore. So that's enough about me. Excuse me. What I'd like to do is actually talk about you. So what we're going to do now is talk about a crisis in higher education. And Dr. Little, my good friend, I hope you forgive me about calling it a crisis in higher education, but there is. And the crisis is economic in nature. And this is going to bring us all home in the field of entrepreneurship and help you understand the perspective of tech entrepreneurship in relation to your education. One of the most important things you're going to get out of being at BYU is a discovery of who you are and what you want. If you don't get that out of being at BYU, that's a major problem. Because how do you know what you're going to spend your most valuable commodity on? Your most valuable commodity being your time and the freedom to do with that time what you want if you don't know where you're going. And who you are will tell you where you want to go. So let's look at this a little bit. First of all, my comments on higher education are coming from these two important research works. One was published in the MIT Technology Review called The Crisis in Higher Education, and another one was done in Time Magazine with about 40 pages dedicated to it in this edition. Here's the number one issue in education. This costs continue to soar. Now, you're at one of the best values in America, so good for you for choosing a great place that is highly subsidized and very low tuition. This is a great, smart move on your part. But in America, we have tuition costs still going up 7 to 10% a year. 7 to 10% a year when inflation is not running that high. Now, some areas of the economy are running that high because they're not always putting all the right things into their calculation on inflation because they're not putting energy and food. But the bottom line is this, is that with these kind of escalating prices that keep going up and up and up, the question is, how is it performing for its customers, the students? And many, many, many universities are not performing very well. The last few years, something like 1 out of 2 students that graduate every spring, only 1 out of 2 land a job in the major that they graduate in. The rest, or the majority of the rest, go to low-paying service jobs. That's especially a problem when you have the student debt problem. Makes it worse. Right, adjusted to $2011, adjusted for inflation, from 1993 to the year 2011, almost doubled the amount of debt that students leave college with. There's something like $1 trillion in student debt, with many, many, many students unable to make the payments against that debt. Matter of fact, they're thinking this could be a major economic debacle like the mortgage crisis was in 2007. It's just an interesting phenomenon. And this is all going to tie in again to my theme, you'll see. There's reasons why we're not seeing some expected economic occurrences, such as fixing the 2007 economic debacle took printing a lot of money, inflating the U.S. money and the world currencies in order to plug the holes. But we haven't seen the natural occurrence of inflation, such as increased salaries. Matter of fact, salaries have gone flat with all this extra money printed. That's not supposed to happen. And you're going to see why in just a second. It's kind of interesting. Now, this is a concern because we want, you're a customer of this and you want it to go well. Now, this is an important slide. The bottom line message here on this slide is that attending college is still a very smart move. So that's good, right, Steve? Yeah. If you're a high school graduate, in 2011 dollars, you're expected to make $1.4 million over your lifetime. If you're a bachelor degree holding person, you will make $2.4 million. It's an extra $1 million. That's good, right? That makes the education pay for it. Now, if you're smart like Dr. Little and get a PhD, $3.5 million in lifetime earnings. And if you become a doctor, a lawyer, or some type of professional degree holder, $4.2 million. So education is still important. And you need to pay attention to the trends and watch what's going on and hold your university accountable. A lot has to do with you by choosing the right major. Now, this is not a paid plug, but if I had children going through school, I love the entrepreneurship major here, but I almost would say major in information systems first. I know you're going to like that, and you didn't ask me to say that, but the reason is because when I talk to 45-year-old successful people, they say, and I ask them, what would you change if you could go back to school? They almost invariably say, I would have taken a computer science or software programming class. Almost invariably. Because they could have been in the meetings, they could have understood things, they could have had more success and less headaches during the previous 20 years. So that's kind of interesting to listen to the advice of people like that. So choosing the right major is important. Russian literature may be great, but I'm not sure what you're going to do with it. And you got to get real. Now, the industry that keeps raising the tuition 17% a year thinks it's just important to come to college to learn how to think. And that is for certain disciplines. But most of you are here, and let's see by show of hands, who's going to college to secure a place in life to make more money than they would if they didn't go to college? It's almost universal. Now, there's some of you that are here probably just because you love to learn, and that's okay. Now, this is interesting. The massive open online courses, these are interesting. I don't know what's going to happen with these because they've kind of sputtered, and this is going to have some kind of impact. As Steve mentioned, or Dr. Little mentioned, I was at Google for a little over a year. I got to see inside that they're very, very, very much into these, as are most of the tech companies. And these massive online courses are going to have some kind of impact. We even have a good friend of ours, David Bradford, whose wife, Linda Bradford, that's a Utah County great entrepreneur. David Bradford was the CEO and chairman of Fusion.io, which just sold for a couple $2 billion. He was general counsel at Novell for 15 years. His wife has a company that is literally making a 3D world of a university where you can be at your home and walk across campus, Harvard's campus, walk up into a lecture hall and sit in and listen to the lecture. And so where this is going to have an impact and what it's going to hit, but you can certainly think about how much cheaper it would be to build a university in a 3D world inside a computer or a computer system than it would be physically. but there's something to be said for the physical experience, of course, and I don't know where that's exactly going to lead. Okay, so I want to get back to this. This is an interesting slide for me. I'll ask Dr. Little this question. Why, as an entrepreneur, would this slide just be funny to me?
Well, I'm looking at the differential and the amount that you invest for that differential, and looking at comparative value between how much I'm going to invest and how much I'm going to get back. And you know, you might want to think about how do you maximize what you get back based on what you put in.
Right.
But there's also the overall bottom line is an interesting one, and most entrepreneurs would not be happy with any of these numbers for lifetime earnings.
Ding, ding, ding. You get the prize for the last comment there. You travel with some of the great entrepreneurs in the LDS Church and Utah, right? And you've spent vacations with them, and you get to hobnob with them. And you've been in there. I've been with you. If, let's say, 40 of these people were sitting in a room and I showed them this slide, what do you think would be the comments in the room?
Okay, I've heard this comment before. What they'll say is something like, "Oh, it's so risky just to go work for the man. And cap my earnings at some number here. I want to do so much more."
Yeah, this is actually, for many of these people, a rounding error. These numbers are rounding errors for successful tech entrepreneurs. Now that seems like such a brash thing to say and kind of disgusting, but it's true. It's true. Now, what does that mean? It means there's another side of the world. Entrepreneurs are those who see opportunities, take risks, and they own or control the assets in play and create wealth by providing great products and services. The rest of the people are renting their time, usually for a fixed amount, and exchanging their valuable commodity, their time. So like when you rent your time and get paid $20 an hour, the reason the person is renting your time for $20 an hour is because he can make $100 or $200 from that $20 expense. And entrepreneurs, what they're doing is saying, hey, I want to be on the other side of that transaction. Instead of renting my time, I'm going to rent others' time and leverage it and make money. And then, why do I have to do people? They're expensive and annoying. I could do machines and leverage them. So that's going to bring us to the next topic here. But I don't want to be too brash and say this, but I'm serious. And I'm no different than any of you. I was a student at BYU, and there were times in my life where I was making this amount per month. All right. Now, what about your job and career prospects? Here's an interesting problem. If you're one of the two that doesn't get a job in your chosen major, the average is you're earning $19,300 a year in a low-paying service job. That's not very good. That's not what you go to college for. Now, that may not be true at BYU because it's such a top institution. So you're already blessed by being here, and you don't have to worry quite as much about this issue. But it still is a concern for us as a nation. Now, this used to be great. About 4 years ago, this was hot, hot, hot. Going to get an internship at Google or Dropbox or Airbnb or any of these great companies, Facebook, all that. But here's one thing. Our favorite people in the world, attorneys, spoiled it. But there's still great opportunities to go see what the tech world is like. And I really highly recommend in Utah finding a great tech company and seeing if you can do an internship at one of them. But there is a problem here. For some reason, the lawyers thought that these internships were breaking federal laws, and so they started suing all these companies, and not as easy to get as they used to, which is too bad because I thought they were a great thing. But if you can get a great internship, it's something to think about. Now, here's an alternative way of thinking. There's a new trend in the most important and hottest job space in the nation, which is software engineering. There's a negative 4% unemployment rate in Utah for software engineers. That means if everybody that claims they're a software engineer were employed and in a job, there'd still be 4% of the jobs open without somebody to fill it. That's amazing. What does that create in supply and demand? What's that create? You're getting paid a lot of money. I'm telling you, it's nuts out there. Nuts with software engineers. So I met a young lady who got an economics degree from BYU, and she's hung around and tried to get a job in Utah, and she couldn't get a job. And she was about to go back to Wisconsin and live with her parents and take a waitress job at a restaurant. But just before she was about to commit to that, she ran into another alternative opportunity, and that is coding boot camps. There's an interesting thing going on right now in America where the demand for software engineers is so great that uncertified, unaccredited schools that run for only 12 weeks a session are popping up and getting 100% placement rates of their students. So let me make sure you understand this. You go to this place for 12 weeks, and by the end of the 12 weeks, you have multiple job offers. There's 3 of these at least running in Utah. And a disclaimer, one of them, the Dev Mountain, was co-founded by my son because he saw this opportunity. And you go there, and in Utah, these ones almost all get 100% placement rate, and the starting salaries are $45,000 to $85,000. So this young woman I told you about, she saw this and went to one of these schools. She finished the program, and that's when I met her. But she told me 6 weeks into the program, she had 3 job offers, and she took one for $65,000. This was last year or 6 months ago. So I'm sitting there going, what in the world is going on here? Because there's a lot of people paying a lot of tuition at universities and a lot of funky majors that aren't ever going to get them a job. So it's kind of fascinating. Just something to note and something to think about and try to assimilate it in. Now, more important than anything right now is I want to talk to you about the future and about what's coming down the pike, and it's all going to tie together with the takeaway message. While you're going to check that, I forgot one thing. I forgot I was going to share this. This is real quickly. This is a trend, the future trend. This ties into it, so I think the audio should play natural. We'll see if it does. This was a big study done for the year 2000. There were 6 billion people at the time. There's now 7 billion. And there's about 60 pages in Time magazine dedicated to this. And it said, world population, when will it double to 12 billion? When do you think that will happen? By what year? A couple guesses. 2000 what? Did I hear something? 50 or so? No, actually never. It's going to go up to 9 billion and then back down to 6 billion. It's never going to hit 12 billion. And it's because of that word up there, urbanization. What's happening, and we've seen 500 million people in China this happened to over the last 15 years. It's happening in Mexico. They're all congregating in the big urban centers. Mexico City is now 120 miles wide, 35 million people. People moving there constantly with urbanization. Up until 150 years ago, the world was agricultural in nature, and wealth was having lots of children, sons and daughters who could work your land. And you spent 10 hours a day just to get the food that you needed every day. And you were wealthy if you had more people that could work and get systems together, and you could get that work done in 4 hours a day and have 6 hours a day to do other things, maybe livestock, all that. That's how you create wealth. It's not that way anymore. When we want food, it's kind of embarrassing, right? We could walk a block away to a supermarket that has every kind of food we could ever dream of for super cheap with no work on our part. It's crazy what's happened. So the whole world's different. Less than 1% of the people are involved in making food. And There's no advantage to having large families anymore. Matter of fact, if you're working in downtown Chicago and living in downtown Chicago, is it pretty cool to have 8 kids? Would there be any economic advantage? Maybe on the taxes or something, I don't know. They take pity on you and give you money or something, I don't know. So it's just it's a real challenge for LDS people, right? To think about having a larger family. And right now, your competitors are having no children or 1 child when they're 40. And from 20 to 30, when you're really establishing yourself, they're just not having to do that because there's no economic advantage. Now that's going to play into this next thing. Okay, now the robotic threat. The robotic threat is something interesting. Please pay attention.
One of the hallmarks of the 21st century is that we are all having more and more interactions with machines and fewer. If you've lost your white-collar job to downsizing or to a worker in India or China, you're most likely a victim of what economists have called technological unemployment. There's a lot of you going around with more to come. At the vanguard of this new wave of automation is the field of robotics. Everyone has a different idea of what a robot is and what they look like. But the broad, universal definition is a machine that can perform the job of a human. They can be mobile or stationary, hardware or software, and they are marching out of the realm of science fiction and into the mainstream. The story will continue in a moment. The age of robots has been anticipated since the beginning of the last century. Fritz Lang fantasized about it in his 1927 film Metropolis. In the 1940s and 50s, robots were often portrayed as household help. And by the time the Star Wars trilogy arrived, robots with their computerized brains and nerve systems had been fully integrated into our imagination. Now they're finally here, but instead of serving us, we find them competing for our jobs. And according to MIT professors Eric Brynjolfsson and Andrew McAfee, one of the reasons for the jobless recovery.
Our economy is bigger than it was before the start of the Great Recession. Corporate profits are back. Business investment in hardware and software is back higher than it's ever been. What's not back is the jobs.
And you think technology and increased automation is a factor in that?
Absolutely.
The percentage of Americans with jobs is at a 20-year low. Just a few years ago, if you traveled by air, you would have interacted with a human ticket agent. Today, those jobs are being replaced by robotic kiosks. Bank tellers have given way to ATMs. Sales clerks are surrendering to e-commerce. And switchboard operators and secretaries to voice recognition technology.
There are lots of examples of routine, middle-skilled jobs that involve relatively structured tasks, and those are the jobs that are being eliminated the fastest. Those kinds of jobs are easier for our friends in the artificial intelligence community to design robots to handle them. They could be software robots, they could be physical robots.
What is there out there that people would be surprised to learn about in the robotics area?
Sure. There are highly automated warehouses where there are either very few or no people around. That absolutely took me by surprise.
It's on display at this huge distribution center in Devens, Massachusetts, where roughly 100 employees work alongside 69 robots that do all the heavy lifting and navigate a warehouse maze the size of 2 football fields, moving 10,000 pieces of merchandise a day from storage shelf to shipping point faster and more efficiently than human workers ever could.
We think it's part of the new American economy.
Bruce Welty is CEO of Quiet Logistics, which fills orders and ships merchandise for retailers in the apparel industry. This entire operation was designed around the small orange robots made by a company outside Boston called Kiva, and can now be found in warehouses all over the country. Now, this is the order that she's selling, right, on the screen?
Yes. In a typical warehouse, she'd have to walk from location to location with number codes. And that's the innovation here, is the product comes to her.
And all of this is pre-programmed? Nobody has to sit there and tell me about where to go?
No, it's all done with algorithms. A lot of mathematics, a lot of science that went into this.
Customer orders are transmitted from a computer to Wi-Fi antennas that direct the robots to the merchandise. guiding them across an electronic checkerboard with barcodes embedded in the floor panels. Once the robot arrives at its destination, it picks up an entire shelf of merchandise and delivers it to the packing station. It then speeds off to its next assignment.
They know if they need to get from point A to point B, and they're not carrying anything, they can go underneath the grid. We call that tunneling. So they're very smart.
You think they run into each other?
Yeah, you think that, but it never happens.
If you had to replace the robots with people, how many people would you have to hire?
Probably 1.5 people for every robot.
So it saves you a lot of money.
Yes.
And it's not just going on in warehouses. El Camino Hospital in California's Silicon Valley has a fleet of robots called tugs that carry meals to patients, medicines to doctors and nurses, blood samples to the lab, and dirty linen to the laundry. A hospital spokesman told us the tugs are supposed to supplement nurses and hospital staff, not replace them. But he also believes that robots and humans working together is the beginning of a new era. Robots are now wielding scalpels for surgeons, assisting in the most delicate operations, allowing them to see and snip their way through prostate surgeries with minimal damage. And they've begun filling prescriptions in hospital dispensaries and local pharmacies. Economic evolution has been going on for centuries, and society has always successfully adapted to technological change, creating more jobs in the process. But Eric Brynjolfsson and Andrew McAfee of MIT think this time may be different.
Technology is always creating jobs, it's always destroying jobs, but right now the pace is accelerating, it's faster, we think, than ever before in history. So, as a consequence, we are not creating jobs at the same pace that we need to.
And we ain't seen nothing yet.
The changes are coming so quickly, it's been difficult for workers to retrain themselves and for entrepreneurs to figure out where the next opportunities may be. The catalyst is something called computer learning, or artificial intelligence, the ability to feed massive amounts of data into supercomputers and program them to teach themselves and improve their performance.
What's the weather like today?
It's how Apple was able to create Siri, the iPhone robot,
Here's the weather for today.
and Google, its self-driving car.
We've been amazed at how rapidly this has been happening.
This is Jeopardy!
IBM's deep QA system that plays Jeopardy. We had a contest here to pit against our best MIT students, the best Harvard students we could put up against, and not surprisingly, Watson won. It's being used in real practical applications now on Wall Street and in call centers. Siri, millions of people are using that every day.
The fact that computers can now understand and respond to human speech, the fact that they can actually generate codes of decent quality, they can drive cars, they can win at Jeopardy. We're seeing technology demonstrate skills that it's never ever done before.
And it's putting new categories of jobs in the sights of automation, the 60% of the workforce that makes its living gathering and analyzing information. This piece of software, called e-discovery, is now used by law firms in the discovery portion of legal proceedings, a job that used to require hundreds of people sifting through boxes and boxes of documents. We now have robots gathering intelligence and fighting wars, and robot computers trading stocks on Wall Street. It's all part of a massive high-tech industry that's contributed enormous productivity and wealth to the American economy, but surprisingly little in the way of employment.
We absolutely are creating new jobs, new companies, and entirely new industries these days. When Eric and I go out to Silicon Valley and look around, the scale and the pace of creation is astonishing. What these companies are not doing, though, is hiring a ton of people to help them with their work.
Because they don't have them, because they can't find them,
Because they can't find everyone they need, but they don't need that many people to work in these incredibly large and influential companies. To make that concrete, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google are now all public companies. Combined, they have something close to $1 trillion in market capitalization. Together, the four of them employ fewer than 150,000 people, and that's less than the number of new entrants into the American workforce every month.
And it's roughly half the number of people that work for General Electric. Ironically,
I started this a little late, so the end question on this video is, what are all the people going to do? I have an assignment for you. On YouTube, there's 2 videos. One's called Humans Need Not Apply, If you think you're different, if you think a doctor or anyone can't be replaced by robotics, watch that video. If you think this is different, if you think this is not any different than in the past, it is. There's some real changes coming. We're seeing things happen that haven't happened before. Meet Savioke is also an interesting video about a real robot taking jobs away by doing interesting things. So, something to look at. Now, here's the last slide. Stick with me, and I'll explain my takeaway from today. Imagine this is all the people. And right here, these are the blue-blooded people. These are the people, that, super intelligent, get the highest degrees, maybe born in the right family, right name, get to the right place. They make it. I don't know how else to explain it. I'll just say the blue-blooded people. A certain sliver of them, they're going to be entrepreneurs too. They're going to start companies and own the stuff. Then there's the rest of us. And a certain sliver is also, not everybody's going to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody can be an entrepreneur. But certainly anyone can be an entrepreneur. So if we look at this and say, okay, here's the entrepreneurs over here. These are the people that are going to own the robots, that are going to own the systems, that are going to get this done. There's going to be so much opportunity entrepreneurially, it's going to be mind-boggling what's coming down the pike. I wish I were young again and could ride this wave, because it's going to be phenomenal. But there's also going to be some fallout, and there's going to be the creation of some of these folks here that are going to be low-paying service jobs, displaced. These videos, if you go watch them, they're going to all end, and they get asked, what are all the people going to do? And they don't have an answer for that. It's really fascinating. It's something to think about. But I can tell you, and this is the takeaway message, entrepreneurship is creating your own job, certainly, but it's much more. It's not just making your job so you can have an income, which is a great part of entrepreneurship too, that you can be in control of your destiny and create your own job. It's also about owning and controlling the robots and the other threats to jobs, to when you're working for somebody else, to working for the man. Leveraging them to your benefit instead of being displaced by them. So, as you learn this semester from visitors that come here and have built incredible companies, and you're going to have them come and they're going to tell their stories to you, they were no different than you. They just said, I can do this and I'm going to go do it. And you are facing, I believe, an exponentially greater opportunity than I faced when I left school in 1985. So it's all about the limits you put on yourself or don't put on yourself and what you can achieve. And you'll bless lives by being a part of the coming trends and taking advantage of them, building great products and services. Thank you for your time.